Is the connection okay for you right now?
Is it okay
Or
for you right now?
yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah, I'm guessing. All right, this is your show, Twoms. Okay.
It's my turn. My time to
It's
shine.
your time to shine, shawty. So thank you everyone for tuning in and watching this installment of Imprint. As many or maybe none of you know, Imprint has taken a little bit of a hiatus, but we are back. And what better way to bring in the series than with Mrs. Twaambo? So I'm actually, if I tried to introduce her, I would of course do a disservice. So I'm going to allow her to introduce herself. Yes, so can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, where you live, some of your current passions and endeavors, all that good stuff.
Okay, so hi everybody. My name's Twaambo. I am from Lusaka, Zambia, representing southern part of Africa,
Woo.
sunny side of Africa. And yes, I'm currently living in Berlin. I've been living here since January. Before I was living in Bonn, and before that I lived in London, and before that I lived in the US, and before that I kind of lived in Russia as well. So I've lived in quite a number of places. And yeah, I'm just a young African lady that's passionate about writing and reading, creating things, and most of all, empowering young Africans to just be themselves and working through their emotions and being the best that they can be. And I try to do that as authentically as possible as I can. So yeah, that's who I am.
I'm really happy that you said that piece about authenticity, because I was almost tempted to ask you, do you see yourself as like an African motivational speaker, like one of those people that you see on infomercials that are like, you can do it, buy my book. You know what I mean? And so I think the term that you used before when we talked was like, I think creative encouragement. So can you just kind of describe that phrase to people that are like, what does that mean? Whatever else they're asking.
Creative encouragement for me is, yeah, letting young Africans know that they can have a creative career, or they can be creative and not have to worry about how they're going to pay their bills. I mean, it's an important thing, you know, to pay your bills. You don't want to be out there on the streets stealing stuff. But I think young Africans need to be encouraged to express their creativity, whether it's in their writing or singing or painting, sculpture, etc. I feel like as young Africans, we've been taught that that's not what we're supposed to do to make a living, that it's only supposed to be a hobby. And we need to be more serious and get a university education, and that's the only way to go forward. But as we've seen in our economies in Africa, and just for Africans around the world, if you're not successful in getting a job even after you have this degree, you still have lots and lots of talents that you can use to put yourself out there and eventually get yourself a job that you might enjoy even more than you sitting in an office and pounding numbers. So me encouraging young Africans to work more on their talents or be more creative has come from me switching from a science background to a more creative background. So to tell a little bit about myself, I studied what is called surgical technology, so helping a doctor in the operating room and passing instruments, and I studied biology as well. And I really, really enjoyed that. I enjoyed doing it. I've always loved science, but I always looked at reading and writing as just a hobby, just something that I did to pass the time, and I really liked it. I wrote little romance novels for friends in high school, you know, with whoever, you know, I would insert the name of whoever their crush was, and they lived happily ever after. And they were pretty popular. But I never thought that I would do it for a living, and I'm doing it for a living now. I actually write and make money from it, and I'm really proud that I did that. And I would also like to say that, yeah, I think I'm okay with having changed my mind from science to creativity. And what young people need to know is that it's okay to change their minds. So if I ever decided that I don't want to do this anymore and go back to science, it would still be okay. But I would have at least given it a shot and tried to, you know, be as creative as I can be and do something with it.
What do you say to someone that's like just completely terrified at the suggestion of them leaving what they feel like they have to do to go do something that they want to do, especially given a lot of the pressure that parents put on them? And I'll give an example, and I didn't even put this into perspective because I was fortunate to actually have supportive parents in a family that's like, yeah, go study psychology, even though that's unorthodox, quote unquote, whatever. But like, I was speaking to a colleague of mine, and he was saying that the reason that he feels like he couldn't pursue something that is less secure, like in the arts or whatever, is because his parents came and sacrificed everything, and so they almost feel like they have to see the fruit of their labor, or it's like you kind of just disappointed our whole family, and what was the point of this?
Right.
So,
like kind of like you owe them. I mean, they went through all this.
Yeah. So what do you say to the high schooler that's watching this and like, that sounds good and everything, but I don't want to disappoint my parents?
I would say that they should continue to foster this creativity even whilst they're studying or working that job that, their parents has approved them to work. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's how I started out. Was I was writing a blog and I was writing little things on the side before I jumped in full time. And I'm not going to say that it's going to be easy. It's going to be terrifying. But what you need to do is, first of all, you need to start slow, start working on it. Get to know other people that are doing what you want to do. Mm. Get insight from them. What does it take to actually do what they did? How did they get there? Have them look at whatever work that you're doing. Let them critique it. Get to know a lot about what it is that you want to get into. And then only can you make the leap. I'm not talking about, well, I've always wanted to sculpt, so now I'm going to quit my job and then I'm going to go do it. You don't even know what material you want to work with. Experiment a little bit with, what does it take to become a sculptor? Do I just want to work with stone, or do I actually want to be a potter? Like there's differences in these things. So explore a little bit of what your interests are. Speak to other people. We're living in an age now of social media. You can go on the internet and Google everything. Just find out, what does it take? Who are the people that are living close to you, or people that you went to school with that are maybe into it? Get a little more information before you actually make the jump. And then also know that I think at the end your parents want happiness for you, and they may think that you working that desk job makes you happy, but if you can speak to them and let them know that because of course you have to give them proof. I think with African parents, you kind of have to be like, look, I'm working on this. I know how it's going to work. Yeah. Give me a year to try it out. And that's the other thing, is that there's nothing wrong with saying, I'm going to take a year out and I'm going to try it. Mm-hmm. Because you never know. It's okay to change your mind. It's okay to try it for a year, for 2 years. If it doesn't work, you can go back to your job. It's totally okay. People change careers every day. And it's okay to try it. But I just feel that a lot of our Africanness and a lot of our arts and our creativity is being lost because we're not being encouraged to do it. We're not showing it to the world. Of course it was hard for musicians and sculptors and etc. to do it back home. I mean, you don't even really know of anybody that's famous that you can pinpoint right now and be like, that's a famous African artist, or that's a famous Zambian artist, Because a lot of the times, these things are lost. People paint, foreigners buy them, they take them to their homes, young Africans are left not knowing who this person was and how that actually came about. And so I would like to see us foster a little more and be a little more adventurous with it, so that we can make our parents proud. I think for them, yes, they left home and they came to different countries, gave us these opportunities, but I think that it worries them as well that Africanness is being lost day by day because they miss it. And if you could also just tell them that they could be a part of keeping that in check, so to say, I think they wouldn't have a problem with it.
Yeah, I mean, you talked a lot about being able to, you said it's okay a lot. Like if you take on this job and it doesn't work out, it's okay. I personally think that you feeling that way or being able to communicate that comes from a sense of like self-assurance and self-confidence. But I also know a little bit about you, and I know that you keep like positive peers around you. So I just wanted to say, has that been a challenge for you living in, where did you say, Lufthansa?
I'm in Berlin.
Are you, okay.
But Lufthansa is the airline over here, yeah.
Okay, maybe I'm just, okay, it's getting a little late. But you, being in Berlin, has it been a challenge for you to find African creatives or black creatives or people that, like a circle that has been encouraging of you and like, because you mentioned your transition, so like, did you speak to people, was that in person or is that digital? How does that work for you, having a support system?
Most of my interactions have been digital. I mean, with social media, especially with Twitter, it's very easy to reach out to somebody and say, hey, are you in Berlin? Do you do this? Do you do that? Just the other day, I sent out a notice in a newsletter that people get about jobs or homes or meetups and stuff. And I just wrote, I said, are there any young women of color that would like to meet? And I got a really positive response. So it's like this is something that everybody wants, but nobody's making the move to actually do.
Now, what's the something you're mentioning?
Sorry?
You said this is something?
I mean, something as in for all of us young people of color or young Africans to meet and foster each other's creativity.
I see, okay.
Because this notice that I sent out was, basically let's talk. Let's talk about African writing. Let's talk about African music. And people are dying to give their opinion about, this stuff and talk about how it touched them and how it changed their lives and how they're also thinking about writing something, but they don't know what the next step is. They don't know who is going to read it. I mean, there's all of these problems about, I want to write, but I live abroad, and I don't know how I can get my book out to people back home, right? Because if you're going to sell something online, you think about, you can pay with credit card or with PayPal, and sometimes people back home don't have that.
Right.
But then again, people don't know that there's something really great. I think you know what it is. It's called Okada, this app that you can download on your phone. And there's lots of really young African authors on there, and you can pay via like your mobile credit. And so there's lots of stuff like that that's coming up that people don't know. But it takes us meeting and talking about it and saying, what are we going to do? And you have young fashion designers, and you have all kinds of people that are living in the diaspora that want to be involved with other creatives back home. But there is definitely a disconnect. And how can we work together? How can we get the materials out to people that want to buy them? How can we price them in a way that is affordable for everybody? So there's all of these things, and we really do need to meet up, whether it is in the digital space, whether it is, you have a meetup or Skype calls or whatever. We need to sit down and talk about what are we going to do and how are we going to do it. And I think it's really, really important.
Yeah. Agreed. And I just want us to kind of take a little time to talk about what you have personally done to address some of these issues, because you're not someone that raises an issue and just looks around like, who's going to fix it? You've actually been taking steps, and I've been noticing ever since I've known you for the past, how long has it been? Like 2?
Yeah, about 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious. So let's talk a little bit about your website and, what you're hoping to accomplish with it and what I've already seen you doing and just some of your intentions behind some of your great work.
Yeah. Well, to kind of get that moving, it was the podcast that we did on Ezibota, actually, called Diaspora Truth. That was really, really fun to do, to talk to young Africans in the diaspora, talk about what they're doing, what they want to accomplish, how do they miss home, how do they keep a little bit of home, with them. And also I write on my blog, Truly Twaambo, and I basically... There, I'm more motivational, so I talk about how you can work through whatever emotional things that you're feeling, but then I also like to keep a little more Africanness in there and write about young African people that I really, really like and what they're doing. And then also I just wrote another ebook, a guide to young Africans becoming creatives, because I think that this is something that we really should address, is that it's okay for young Africans to do that. So I try to do different things. I started with the podcast, I write my blog, I've written this ebook, and I would like to do more meetups, like this thing that I did here in Berlin, where you basically just write a notice and people come. And I'm still trying to think of what direction I would want to take that, whether it's just, hey, come, let's hang out and talk, or whether it's going to be just for women, whether it's going to be just for creatives, I'm not sure yet. But it's something that I want to do. I think I want to go now from it being a little bit impersonal with the podcast and writing to actually meeting people in person and, doing something about it. I've never been one to sit back and just be like, well, there was a problem and somebody else needs to fix it. I mean, if we don't do it for ourselves, then who will?
Yeah. And where do you think that your source of inspiration comes from? Because there are a lot of people that will be like, well, there's this problem here and I'm not going to be part of the solution. I'm just going to keep pointing to this problem, right? So people like you are different in a sense, because you're like, okay, well, what can I do to either decrease this gap or lessen this issue, whatever. So are there things that either came from your family, your cultural background, daily things that you do that kind of help you continue being this person that's more solution-oriented than problem-oriented?
Hmm. I think I got it mostly from my mom. She was never one to sit around and just wait and be like, well, what are we going to do? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, what can I do? What's the first step? What's the one small thing I can do to get this ball rolling? I think it's important to always think, what's the first step? Send the email, make the call, write the first page, just something. It doesn't have to be this huge thing. A lot of us think that you have to then go get, this petition signed, and then you have to get the key to the city, then you can be, the change. It could be just one small thing. Just write the email. Write the email to somebody and ask a question.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's surprising that people actually respond really well. Because nobody ever expects to get an email asking a question. And also I just look at other cultures that have done so well, and I'm always like, we can do that too. You look at Bollywood, you look at K-drama, you look at all of this, and these are people that have pride in who they are and their backgrounds, and they're not afraid to show it. They don't care about Hollywood. They're making movies for themselves. They're making music for themselves. And that's something that we can do too. But I also feel that we have a huge connection with, say, African Americans and Africans. And it's hard, I think, for me to see there being a clear distinction, because you get a lot of young African artists that are rappers, and you look at their videos, and it is a rap video, basically. But sometimes I wish that they would embrace a little bit more of their African side, And now you get a lot of American artists that are going to Africa to perform or to shoot videos. And yeah, maybe we can reach like one common thing. I mean, we are one people, so to say. But I think that Africans also need to get up and not take too much example from African Americans, and then show them a little bit as well how we've done it. I feel like Africans Americans have had to own who they are and make something out of it. And us Africans, we have something too, and we just need to learn to love it and showcase it to the world. Yeah.
That's interesting. So I know that a lot of times when you either share pieces or you meet up with people or and you mentioned that you have a lot of different endeavors, which I think is great. I think that relies too much on one source or stream or channels really setting themselves up for failure. But I kind of want to ask, what are some of the stumbling blocks or roadblocks that you have faced? Because you already know this, I think, and I'm very critical of like social media a lot of times because people often display their highlight reel and don't even allude to the behind the scenes, right? So they're just like, yeah, I'm just so successful. Look at me, wah, wah, wah. It's like, but how did you get there? Because people want to grow. They don't want to just see you be awesome. I think it's horrible. So if you can just share like some of the challenges that you faced and either how you overcame them or advice that you would have to people that are like, wow, she's amazing. What can I do to be like that?
I think the biggest thing is, like you said, is just looking at other people and thinking that they're so hyped and they're doing so well, and you think, well, why aren't I as popular? And is my work getting out? And is it helping anybody? So, for example, the kind of motivational stuff that I write is not stuff that I think doesn't go as viral as a fashion post. Like if somebody's wearing something cool, people are really, really quick to share. But if you write something about, you need to face the fact that you're suffering emotionally and you need to deal with it, nobody's going to share because they have to deal with their emotions, right? So this one stumbling block has been actually believing that my work matters. And that's a huge thing with creatives as well, is that you can't compare yourself to other people. You have to believe that your own stuff matters. And that's been a big one for me. And then second has just been, rallying lots of young Africans to get on the bandwagon, get on Ezibota or get on Creative Nestlings or whatever. Like, just believe in yourself and believe in us as well. Because I don't think there's a lot of trust between us.
Yep.
Everybody's trying to make $1, and it's like, if you're not offering me anything, then I'm not going to work with you. And that's one thing young African creatives need to learn as well, is that when you start out, you're probably not going to make any money. You're not going to make any money, and you probably have to collaborate with some people for you to sharpen your skill. And it's okay for that to happen. Like, it's okay. Some people make money immediately, great, but some people don't. So it comes with believing in yourself, getting some trust. I really, really wish that we trusted each other a lot more, but we don't. And I really hope that we get there. And so the stumbling blocks have just been believing myself a lot more, and trusting people more, knowing who to trust, that only comes, after a certain time.
Right.
And yeah, trying not to give up, because it does get frustrating. Sometimes I do feel like, well, whatever. But that's not in my nature. When I feel like that, I know that I need to back off a little bit, get a breather, some me time, whatever, and then come back to it, because it can be frustrating. Because we are, I think, still at the beginning of a movement, so to say. Everybody's trying to find their feet. Everybody's trying to be a photographer, a writer, a designer, etc. Nobody trusts each other. But I think that we will get there if we don't give up. So, yeah.
Right. And I think you said a lot of interesting things. I think the biggest one for me was, like, even though we were in the diaspora and, like, located all across the globe, there's a lot of things that we obviously inherited from our parents. And I think the main thing that I see amongst diasporans, young diasporans, is lack of trust. Like, we just don't have it. And I think a lot of these things are obviously byproducts of colonialism. But I'm just like, people would be more excited to work with someone that doesn't look like them, doesn't sound like them, doesn't have a challenging hard name as well, because they're like, well, at least I know they're not going to try to 419 me. And I just think it's so unfortunate. So I love that you mentioned, like, first of all, believing that our work matters and, like, that what we're doing is important and good enough, and then secondly, trusting others, because the first one you mentioned is an internal matter, right? It's all in your head, it's in your heart, and the second one is like, okay, once I get myself together, how then can I reach out? So I think that's really great that you mention those things.
I mean, that's why I write all the emotional stuff, because it is about you. Like, if you're not straight in your head and your emotions, it's going to be hard to work with other people.
Right.
Because then you bring ego into it, and oh my God, her tone, what did she mean? And I'm never going to work with her. And it's like, well, that could have been the best opportunity for you. But because you have all of these issues that you never worked through, you missed it. And we do need to work on the trust. And that's still something that I'm trying to figure out, is what's the best way to do that. I mean, like you said, it's great to know that I can work with somebody whose name is also being butchered by other people because they have an African name.
Yeah.
But it's those small things we need to look at and say, like, okay, this person is like me. They've had experiences like me. And that's what should bind us together. But, yeah, I'm hoping that we get that soon.
Yeah. So, I know beforehand I asked you about this. I think this also might have been a different conversation, but you saying that your imprint is creative encouragement, right? So I just kind of want to ask you this question. 5 years from now, right, what are the kind of conversations, what are the kind of comments that you would like for people to hear when they reflect upon your work? You as a person, truly Twaambo. Maybe 5 years from now is kind of like, that's too soon because you're still pretty young, but maybe let's say 50 years from now, what do you want people to say about what you did? Like, what is your print on your world in Berlin or wherever, Lufthansa, wherever you are? What is your world? Digitally, personally, what is your mark?
I would like to hear that people got started because they heard from me. I would like to hear that they got the courage to just get up and do something, anything, one small thing. Maybe I never published anything, but I wrote these 1,000 poems because I knew that it was okay that I could. I would like to hear people say that, yeah, they basically got the oomph to get going because of something that I said to them, and that they worked with other young Africans because they found out that actually this is the way to go. And so for me, it would be the starting point. I would like to get people going. I would like to share with them the tools that have worked for me in getting going. And for example, you guys work on Ezibota. There's lots of other websites. Like, you guys make the tools, but I'm the person that gets people going to go and use the tools and go as far as they want to go. Because we can have tools, but if people don't know how to get up and start, they're not going to use them. And so that is my part in the journey, is the beginning of encouraging people. You can do it. Yeah, you can do it. There's nothing that's stopping you. Or some of the things that are stopping you are just things that you need to work through before you can begin. So I'm at the beginning of the process, and you guys are going to have to keep the ball rolling.
And I'm just kind of curious, what does that do for you? Like, how do you benefit from knowing that you were the flame that lit someone's fire? How do you benefit from that?
Well, because I never had that. Because I never had that, and I wish that somebody would have talked to me about it and would have encouraged me a lot more and would have told me that it was fine, but that's something that I had to cultivate for myself. You know, I had to do it afraid. And so for me, it's like I've taken the responsibility of telling people you don't have to be afraid. Because look, I've been through it and you can do it too. And so that's what's in it for me, is just having people get over this hurdle, because I needed to work through that by myself. And that's it.
That's really powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. All right. Well, that pretty much concludes our talk. Thank you so much for gracing me with your marvelous presence. So just really quickly, for anyone that watches this and doesn't watch it directly on YouTube or doesn't want to read for whatever reason, can you share your social media links and your website?
Sure. My website is www.trulytwaambo, which is TWAAMBO.com. And my Twitter handle is @bookwormgiraffe, so I'm usually there all the time. You can find me. And I'm looking forward to hearing from everybody.
All right. And thank you, Twaambo, for sharing your mark with me.
Thank you, Beulah. Thank you, Ezibota.
Yes. I forgot to ask you to do this, but I usually like to end this in a wave, so could you wave?
Will you stand up for me and keep my heart from breaking?